All right. Well, hello and welcome to Spooky Hour. Apparently, today my MP3 does not want to work on my computer. So we're going to get that figured out real quick. But yeah, it is 3 in the morning. I admittedly do this to myself every year or every semester actually. And I don't know why I do this to myself every semester, because every semester I get to this time and I'm like, wow, I need to go to sleep. And then I'm here because I need to do my show because I signed up for it. But yeah, we're living life. It's a little chilly in the booth as per usual. And yeah, I'm going to attempt to get this song to play and see if it wants to use the right output before we get too into the show. And let's see how this one goes. There we go, and we'll be right back.
Bright eyes won't satisfy truth. They seem to know me, but really don't seek to show me. Borders that aren't even real. Battles and pathways claim to exist, but probably below me. Paragraph, not even that. Oh, we'll be taken in by the mood. That's what you told me. Guilt by proximity fails to ingratiate me with the crowd. I'd better be lonely. What I can't find, I can't prove in this dress rehearsal, but I'm still confident in which mask I'll choose. I'll put it on like I do when I'm with you. Fictional environment dream. Please entertain this love now. One time and only stumbling through, trying to sell me on such same primitive tools, programming fever dreams with the rules, let them expel me. I'll be confident the next door I choose. Fictional environment.
All right, so we have a proper introduction to Spooky Hour, even though my Spotify doesn't like me today. Good morning, or good evening. We'll stick with good morning for now. And today, usually I would be with, a nice group, and we'd be sitting in Graham, and we'd be talking about all these spooky things and spooky stories. I'm really tired, I'll be honest. So here's my plan, right? I got some spooky stories. We're gonna read some spooky stories, and then we're gonna listen to some spooky music, which is what you hear in the background right now. Believe it or not, I, on occasion, will fall asleep to music like this. Maybe that says something about me. I'm not sure. Admittedly, also, it has been so long since I've been, doing a show in the CBF booth, despite being the WCBF program director, which is a little bit funny. I do High Noon now, but that's always in Graham. So for the first time in a while, we're over here in CBF. So we're gonna start off with some stories from one of my favorite places, which would be Maine. So Maine, we're gonna go from memory. Whenever I go somewhere new, I always go on these ghost tours, right? And Maine had some of the best ghost stories I have actually ever heard. So the first story was about, I believe, the Ledgelawn Inn. So it was built back in 1904, and it was, I believe, just a place that people lived back in the time, not an actual inn at that point. And yeah, so it was a private residence, I believe. And this was a part of like high society. And this all came to an end at the Ledgelawn Inn when an extremely rich young woman was ditched at the altar by her fiance. So essentially, this woman, she was so excited. All these important people were going to be at her wedding. She was excited to get married. And then all of a sudden, she finds out that her fiance has gone missing. And from what I remember, there were search parties for him and everything. And they could not find this man, right? Like, not at all. So she did end up passing away by certain means later. And people now who go and visit the Ledgelawn Inn can be seen if they stay in the same room where she used to live. Well, not can be seen, but they sometimes will see her in the room. Sometimes they'll just see a tuft of her veil hanging from one of the pipes, or they'll see her as an apparition in her wedding dress above their bed, just hanging there. And I think that's so spooky. Part of me, I would stay there. I would absolutely stay there. I think that also says something about me, but And like I said, I heard a lot of like scary, spooky stories when I was in Maine. I think the creepiest one was that I did this tour called Monsters by Moonlight. And as we're sitting right by the coast, and there was something weird happened too. Like something, I don't remember, like some person passed by or just like something happened that everyone was already kind of like, that was a little bit weird. And we asked the tour guide for any like personal stories of just, things she'd seen or heard. And we just got told, one of the first things she said was, if you ask any of the park rangers in Acadia National Park, that they would tell you any spooky stories that they had. I got told by, I believe, one of the park rangers or someone in Maine, just in general, told me that they have heard screams and animal sounds that they could not explain, that they weren't human and they did not belong to any animal that they had ever seen. They've found tracks in the woods that they could not attribute to anything that they know of that exists, which is kind of horrifying. And there was also a story that essentially, I believe it was not a swamp, but a marsh. It was a lady of the marsh, and she would call out for children. She would call out to them as an adult, like their parent calling out for them. And for adults, she would call out to them as a child who was like lost in the woods. And essentially, she'll try to lure you off of the path. And then by the time you realize that, oh, that wasn't a real child, or that wasn't a real, that wasn't my parent calling me out from the trail, you get stuck in the marshes. And it is said that she just takes the souls of people who end up stuck in the marshes, and then they roam mindlessly for eternity, essentially, trying to get out of the marsh. And mind you, when we went on this tour, I went with my mother. When me and my mother went on this tour, we were originally planning to go look at the stars in the park that night. So we were going to go into the park late at night, and, we were going to go look at the stars. Let me tell you, we changed our minds. It's honestly, Maine had to be one of like the creepiest places I've been. And that's even with Savannah, like going to Savannah, Georgia. No, like Maine's got to be one of the creepier places. And in Maine, like on the same Monsters by Moonlight tour, I believe it was, we went to a cemetery. No, not a cemetery, a graveyard. Because I learned, fun fact, the difference between a cemetery and a graveyard is attached to a church, whereas a cemetery is not. And I accidentally just threw my pen. So listen to this music for a second while I grab that. All right, pen secured. Anyways, so it's essentially said, and especially in Maine, this was right in 2022, as, everything was getting better with COVID and people were traveling more that summer. So the tour guide said that there was not a lot of activity because spirits will typically feed off of energy. And because there were no people coming to visit, there was no energy to feed off of. So these spirits were just, dormant, essentially. They weren't really out and about, but once people were coming back, there was a sudden spike in like paranormal activity and such. So when we went into this graveyard, the story we were told is that the last soul, or the last person to be buried there, their soul watches over the graveyard to make sure all other souls, get where they need to be. And then when someone new is buried, obviously, they take over, and that's that. So we go into the graveyard, and I believe my mom got a picture that was like, you could kind of see something peeking out from one of the graves. A little bit spooky, not gonna lie. And then after that, I'm walking around, and I'm like feeling a little weird, like my vision's starting to go a little bit dark around the edges, like my lungs are starting to feel tight, like I'm kind of struggling. I feel like I'm about to have a panic attack. The second I step outside of the graveyard, I'm perfectly fine. And I kind of just looked, and I was like, I looked back and I was like, yeah, hey man, like I'm gonna stay out here. You stay in there, and like we can be chill. And that was my bargain with this spirit. Not really a bargain, but I just looked back. I was like, you're in there, I'm out here. We're chill now. We're homies. We're okay. Please stop that. And then I was fine for the rest of the night. But it was worse because later that night I had a bug land on me, and I didn't realize, like I thought I was just being paranoid, and I didn't realize that it was there until we got back to our hotel, because it had just like, I don't know how to explain it. Like I couldn't see it, and I couldn't like feel it. Like I thought something like hit me, and then I just didn't feel anything. And then all of a sudden I did, and I almost cried when I got back to the hotel because it was so scary. And I was like, no, like I convinced myself on this tour that I was just working myself up and just so scared because I was like just on edge. I was not just on edge. That was probably one of the scarier experiences while I was there. Like not almost having a panic attack in a graveyard. It was definitely the bug. And now I feel like I have myself a little bit paranoid that maybe there's a bug on me right now. So we're going to take a quick break, a quick bug check, and I will be right back.
What's up? I'm Brian from the band Real Friends, and you're listening to 88.9 WCVF, The Voice.
You're listening to Fredonia's own local music on WCVF 88.9 The Voice.
And we're back. No bugs. I thought that was going to be a funny, silly little transition, but anyways. Trying to think if I have any other ghost stories that I can think of just off the top of my head. Or it might just be spooky music time because it is late or early, however you want to look at it. But I am certainly... I'll say I'm ready for a nap whenever I go home, and I also have to trudge through the fresh 5 inches of snow, probably 5 inches if I had to guess, to get back home, because all of my housemates are sane and asleep right now, including our very own WDBL program director, Matt. He is definitely sane and asleep because I'm pretty sure he has a show in the morning, maybe. I don't remember off the top of my head. I can check the lineup, though. But yeah, not many people are, silly enough to want to stay up the whole night and be in the station, but there's a couple of you troopers out there. I know Callie's out there. I know Scott's out there. I know Callie has a show after this. Callie doing a little metalcore hour, a little metalcore moment. I'm very excited. Will be listening while I trudge through the snow back to my house and inevitably get back and then can't fall asleep because I'll spook myself. I did actually look up a couple stories just because I was like, maybe I should just find a couple things. And I found one about someone who apparently had an imaginary friend that maybe wasn't so imaginary. So I'm going to read you this story from someone else that I think is really interesting, and it's really funny because the song playing right now is called Story Time. Like, yes, it is. How did you know? So the story goes something like this. So they start saying, most of what I'm going to type is based off things my sisters and parents have told me. When I was around 7 or 8, me and my siblings lived in a not-so-nice 2-story house. It was in a really bad part of town where the crime was prevalent enough that we didn't leave our front/backyard when we were playing. It was a white brick house, very basic, built in the 1950s. My sisters are 2 years apart from me, one older and one younger. We were pretty close and always played together, Xbox, toys, board games, etc. But my sister tells me there were times when I'd be playing by myself in my room, and even sometimes around the house, which of itself wasn't too strange. From kid to adult, I always enjoyed my alone time. The part where things take a more strange turn is apparently I wasn't always playing alone. This is already a little bit spooky. My sister said I'd talk about a friend, James. He was described by me as a boy around my age wearing a sailor costume, around my height, a bit taller. He was friendly for the most part. The details of the behavior between he and I elude me and always have. To be honest, I hardly even remember him, if even at all. I think what I do remember is just memories of the stories I've been told about him. I don't ever really recall this imaginary friend. My older sister always told me that when I was mad at her, I'd go play with James. I'd go upstairs and just shut my door and continue my play and talking as if there was someone in there with me. I always just cross this off as an imaginary friend, of course. My whole life, even into adulthood, I've had a very active imagination. Why wouldn't I cross it off as just that? The strangest thing about this whole ordeal is that when we moved from that house, my family said I was the last one out of the house. I apparently stayed in the porch for a second and said goodbye to James. We drove off, and after about 15 minutes, I fell asleep. From then on, I have never remembered him. If it wasn't for my sister telling me all this, and my parents supporting it, I would have literally never thought about it. Imaginary friend encounter. Either way, it's a strange thing that happened, and I felt like I should tell this story here. Honestly, I feel like, and I've had this confirmed somewhat by my mother as she's talked about a lot of paranormal experiences that she's had. Kids tend to have a very heightened sense in a way, like the same way that people are like, oh yeah, dogs are like more attuned to the supernatural. Kids also tend to have that type of sense. So if a kid were to see something at a young age and it was written off as an imaginary friend, I wouldn't be surprised. I remember being told that my oldest brother one time used to be very, very afraid of cemeteries and graveyards and just did not like them, did not like going near them. And so one time he was taken by my mom to a cemetery just to show him like, look, like it's pretty, there's trees, there's flowers, and it's just like it's people visiting their loved ones. And all of a sudden he looks at her in the empty cemetery and goes, who are those two people digging over there? Why are they digging? And my mom was like, okay, we're going home. Actually, we're going home. And that's all I know about that story. And I think it's actually a little bit funny because it's like, oh, like I'm going to show you that a cemetery isn't scary. And then just something happens and you're like, oh, I actually never mind. You know what I mean? It's a little bit funny, but I've talked about this so many times with people. The way that kids, so there was a moment in time where I really loved listening to like search and rescue stories, but like really like creepy search and rescue stories. A lot of them about like kids who went missing and like reappeared. Now, the one thing that I always find so chilling is that these kids will tell you exactly what happened to them, but they will tell you it in a way that only makes sense to them. So they, like, there was one that I heard where this kid who lived down, I believe in like Louisiana, said that he followed the cows and that's how he wound up where he was. And he was like in the middle of a swamp on a stump. Like not somewhere that a child could get to. And he just said he followed the cows. Like that in that kid's mind had to make such perfect sense. Like in his mind, he was like, yes, this is what happened. But to anyone else, to any adults, it was just like, what do you mean you followed the cows? Like there's no cows here. And I honestly think about that a lot because kids are usually very honest and they'll tell you exactly what they're thinking and exactly what they're feeling. But sometimes it just doesn't make, like, it only makes sense to them. There was another one, like, also just the search and, this is a whole different level of spooky, like, outside of, or maybe not outside of paranormal, but, like, the level of spooky of, like, there's something about the search and rescue stories of, like, kids ending up in places that they just, like, it doesn't make sense. So, yeah. I think we might take a quick break and just listen to some more music. But I'm going to find a couple more stories to tell you, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just let it play out. 'Cause this music also, it's weird. It's this weird mix of soothing and just like kind of unsettling. Which another thing for me, I feel like horror movies. I don't like horror movies. Not at all. Not a fan. My friends just made me watch a horror movie very recently while I was home for Thanksgiving break. They had me watch The Ritual. Because every time, I don't know why I still trust these people to pick movies when I'm there. Because they always end up picking a horror movie. They've picked, I know it's the most recent, like, Evil Dead. And it's so, I can't do gore in horror movies. It's so bad. It is so terrible for people like me who simply cannot handle the gore. I just like, that was the movie they picked. And then this time we watched The Ritual, which was in its own ways very horrifying and also, again, very gory. Could not do it. And the other part about horror movies is it's not even like the audio, because being an audio production major, I can break apart that sound design for you. I could ruin that movie for you. I could break apart the sound design, tell you exactly why it sounds creepy, and tell you exactly like what is happening and how that makes sense. Like the audio. But the visuals, not me. I'm not the type of person that could tell you exactly how they made that that effect or that creature. Like, I couldn't do that. That is when I look away. And then I'm like, okay, so I'm breaking down the sound design here. And like creepy music. So say like breaking down creepy music, it's only creepy to people because it's got this like really eerie high pitch. And that typically tends to set people on like on edge. And it's just simple stuff like that I could absolutely like break apart horror movies. I just break apart audio in general now because my life has been ruined being an audio major, and I just always now break apart the audio where I'm like, oh wow, this is really good audio, or oh wow, this is really bad audio. It's a life that I live, that's for sure. So, you know, I'm out here. But yeah, I think we are definitely going to take a quick break and, you know, listen to some music. And then we'll be back probably with like one more story and maybe some announcements. And then we'll be done for the night. Well, not done exactly. We're already almost halfway through the show. I am surprised I was able to yap for this long. I'll admit I am missing Heather a lot right now. There was a show at our popular local music venue with our favorite band, and it would not be Radiothon if I did not mention Johnny and the Man Kids at least once. And Heather taught me to go word for word for every Johnny and the Man Kids song and to just know all the words and sing along. And because she was not there to do it with me, it was very sad, but I still went word for word for every song for Johnny and the Man Kids. And then I got one of their t-shirts and I got a CD, and it was pretty cool. And right now I'm actually wearing the other band that played, Pretty Good State University. I'm wearing their shirt right now. Pretty comfy, pretty cozy, you know, repping the local music. But before I keep going and just keep yapping, I feel like I should get to that break. So we will be right back.
What's up? I'm Brian from the band Real Friends, and you're listening to 88.9 WCVF, The Voice.
Tune in every Friday at noon to catch one of Fredonia's hottest radio shows, High Noon Friday. Catch the community voices on local news. Keep updated on the latest sports games, the weather, world affairs and international news, and other entertaining segments like trivia and just the facts. High Noon Friday, every Friday at noon, on 88.9 WCVF and 89.5 WDVL.
What's up? I'm Matt.
I'm Colin.
I'm Pat.
I'm Joey. We're House and Home, and you're listening to WCVF 88.9 The Voice.
Thank you again to everyone tuning in. I am back, and I wanted to give you a little message. Make sure you tune in to High Noon Friday, SUNY Fredonia's longest-running variety radio program, which I also happen to be an executive producer and host on, that airs every Friday at noon. High Noon Friday features campus, local, and national news, sports, weather, student-made segments, and trivia. Be sure to tune in to either WCVF 88.9 or WDBL 89.5 every Friday at noon. And that is your reminder that you are listening to WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia, as well as you could be listening to WDVL 89.5, The Inferno. And I am going to be honest, I don't have too many more stories. And by that, I mean I have no stories. But you know what I do have? You know what I do have? I have music. So we're gonna continue the spooky vibe with some music. And yeah, we're gonna keep going. And then that's it. That's all I got. And then I'll be back to say goodbye soon, very soon. And by soon I mean in about 10 minutes I will be back. But until then, please enjoy some of my spooky tunes as we continue on. And yeah, I will be back soon. Well, that is just about all the time that we have for Spooky Hour. I want to thank everyone who listened in for listening in. 3 a.m. It's late. It is just about 4 a.m. now. So, I wouldn't blame anyone for possibly not being here because, oh my goodness, I am so tired. I wouldn't blame you if you were tired as well. But yeah, thank you so much. I always love Radiothon. I always love being on Radiothon, even if I, regret it in the morning because I'm a little bit tired. And yeah, I can't wait to hear Callie's show next, and I can't wait for next semester when we do Radiothon again. So, I'll see you guys on High Noon when I'm on again. And yeah, that's all I got. Thank you again so much for tuning into Spooky Hour, and stay tuned for the rest of Radiothon.